She was dying, right there, in the middle of the road. A young female bobcat, lungs barely rising, her body crushed in the coils of a 20-foot python that didn't even belong in this forest. And just when it seemed over, he came. From the trees, a blur of fur and fury, a male bobcat launched himself onto the snake, fighting with everything he had. Claws. Teeth. Rage. Not for territory. Not for food. For her. What happened next stunned every ranger on scene, and the entire world watching after. That morning, the forest near Sierra Wild Reserve was still waking up. Birds chirped softly, mist drifted between the tall pine trees, and the air smelled like damp earth and sunlight. It was the kind of morning that Ranger Jason Reed loved most, quiet, cool, and predictable. But predictability wouldn't last long. Jason was halfway through his patrol shift, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented metal cup, when his radio buzzed to life. Unit 3, we've got unusual movement near Pine Hollow Road. Might be a wounded animal. Reports say it's not acting normal. Proceed with caution. Jason frowned. Pine Hollow wasn't known for animal sightings, it was too close to the main highway and rarely saw anything larger than a fox. But something in the dispatcher's voice made his stomach twist. He tossed the cup aside and stepped on the gas. 10 minutes later, he turned onto the old asphalt stretch and hit the brakes. His eyes went wide. In the middle of the road, tangled like a nightmare, was a young female bobcat, small, spotted, and struggling. Wrapped tightly around her body was a python. A massive, thick-bodied Burmese python, easily 20 feet long. Its scales shimmered dull gold in the sunlight as it squeezed tighter. The bobcat, barely more than a cub, gasped for breath, her hind legs kicking weakly, claws scraping against the pavement. Jason's mind reeled. Burmese pythons didn't belong here. They were an invasive species from the south, not native to this mountainous forest. How it got here, he didn't know. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that she had only minutes left. Jason slowly stepped out of his truck, eyes locked on the snake, hand reaching for the tranquilizer gun in the glove box. But just as he took his first step, the forest exploded behind him. With a deep growl that seemed to shake the trees, a full-grown male bobcat shot from the brush. Jason barely had time to react before the male slammed into the snake like a missile, fur bristling, claws bared, teeth flashing. He didn't hesitate. He attacked. The python hissed and tightened its grip on the female, but the male bobcat, larger, stronger, and wild with fury, fought like fire. He clawed at the serpent's thick body, sank his teeth into its neck, and yowled with rage. Jason froze, watching in awe. He had never seen anything like it. Bobcats were usually solitary. They didn't risk their lives for each other, especially not like this. But this male wasn't just fighting. He was saving her. The python recoiled, blood seeping from fresh gashes, and finally loosened its grip. The female bobcat collapsed on the road, wheezing. The snake slithered away into the trees, defeated and wounded. But the male didn't chase it. He turned back to her. And nudged her face with his nose. Jason's breath caught. There was no aggression in the male's eyes. Only something quieter. Protective. Fierce. Familiar. He radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Reed. Situation critical. Female bobcat severely injured. Male on scene. Repeat, male bobcat is staying close, do not approach aggressively. Requesting wildlife unit backup and emergency medical team immediately." He kept his distance, moving slowly as the male circled the female. Every time Jason edged closer, the male growled, low and deep. Not a threat, but a warning, don't come any closer unless you mean to help. Jason crouched low. Easy, boy, he whispered. We just want to help her. The male didn't move, didn't blink. His tail flicked. He watched Jason with calm but burning intensity. Then, the female let out a tiny sound, a faint mew, broken and weak. She was alive, but barely. The male stepped back. Just 2 paces. But it was enough. Jason didn't waste time. As backup arrived, 2 wildlife officers and a mobile vet assistant, Jason led them in cautiously. Dr. Miriam Chase, the reserve's lead wildlife vet, examined the female quickly from a distance. She's in bad shape, Miriam said, pulling on gloves. We'll need to sedate and transport. That python nearly crushed her ribs. Can we move her with him this close? Jason asked. I don't think we have a choice, Miriam said, eyeing the male. If we try to take her without him, he might follow, or attack. With the male bobcat watching closely, the team approached the female. Miriam injected a mild sedative, just enough to ease her pain. Then they gently slid her onto a stretcher, wrapping her in soft towels. The male growled low again, pacing in a tight circle, eyes never leaving them. He's not acting territorial, Miriam said. This isn't normal bobcat behavior. She paused, guarding her. As they lifted the stretcher toward the truck, the male suddenly jumped onto the flatbed, placing himself beside the female. He curled his body around her, his head resting near her side. The rangers stared. Did he just get in the truck on his own? One whispered. Jason nodded, stunned. Yeah. I think he's coming with us. The truck rumbled slowly down the gravel trail toward Silver Creek Wildlife Center, and not a single word was spoken. Every bump made Luna, the injured female bobcat, groan softly in her sedated sleep. And each time she did, Blaze, the male bobcat curled beside her, lifted his head, ears twitching, golden eyes scanning the surroundings, body tense like a coiled spring. But he never lashed out. He simply stayed. Ranger Jason Reed drove while Dr. Miriam Chase sat in the back, keeping her eyes on Luna's breathing. The young assistant, Leah, clutched a clipboard, trying not to shake as she glanced at Blaze. He hasn't moved since we left, Leah whispered. He won't, Miriam replied quietly. Not until he knows she's safe. At the center, the gates buzzed open, and staff rushed to greet the incoming team. Blaze raised his head at the noise but didn't growl. He watched with wide, alert eyes as the stretcher was gently lifted from the truck. When they tried to close the tailgate behind her, Blaze leapt down and landed softly beside it. He followed them, step for step, into the treatment barn. Should we separate them? One of the handlers asked nervously. Miriam shook her head. Not yet. We'll stress her more if he's removed. We'll work around him. Inside, the lights buzzed and machines beeped. Luna was lifted carefully onto a padded exam table. Blaze hopped up after her, placing himself at her side. As Miriam and the vet team began examining the injuries, Blaze didn't move. He just stared. Her ribs were bruised, possibly cracked. There were bite marks from the python's fangs and deep abrasions from where her body had scraped the asphalt. But she was breathing on her own. That was something. She's stable, Miriam announced. She's lucky. A few minutes later, and that snake would have crushed her lungs. Blaze huffed, almost like a sigh. Jason, watching from the door, whispered, he understands. The night passed in uneasy silence. Blaze never left her side. He didn't touch the wires or pacing staff. He just watched. If Luna's breathing hitched, he stood. If a machine beeped too loud, his ears perked. At 2 a.m., Miriam returned for a check-in. She expected to find Blaze pacing or perhaps finally asleep. Instead, she found him staring directly at her, eyes calm but alert. As she adjusted Luna's fur, Blaze watched her every move. But when she brushed Luna's paw gently with her gloved hand, Blaze lowered his head again, like he understood. "She's in good hands," Miriam whispered, her throat tightening. The next morning, the team gave the bobcats names, unofficially at first, but it quickly stuck. The female would be Luna, for the pale spot on her forehead shaped like a crescent moon. The male would be Blaze, for his fierce courage and amber-bright eyes. By day 2, Luna stirred. Just after sunrise, she let out a soft growl, not of fear, but confusion. She tried to rise but fell back with a groan. Blaze immediately straightened, leaned forward, and gently pressed his forehead to hers. Luna blinked slowly. And for a moment, their eyes met. "She knows he's here," Miriam said from across the room. "She's not afraid," Leah added. "Not with him." Over the next 48 hours, Blaze rarely moved. He ate very little. When offered food, he only sniffed at it and returned to watching Luna. His muscles stayed tight, his body curled protectively near her, yet always careful not to touch anything medical. One morning, Luna whimpered in her sleep. Blaze stood, stepped forward, and gently rested his head against her shoulder. She quieted instantly. The staff couldn't believe it. "I've never seen anything like this in bobcats," Miriam said to Jason later. "This isn't instinct. It's something deeper. Loyalty. Maybe, even love." Jason nodded. "Whatever it is, he's not letting her go." But that devotion came at a price. By day 3, Blaze was growing weaker. He hadn't eaten a full meal in over 48 hours. His muscles were trembling. His breaths came shallow. "He's exhausted," Leah whispered. "He's burning himself out." Miriam looked worried. "If he doesn't eat or rest soon, we may lose him, even as she recovers." That night, something happened that none of them expected. A sudden windstorm blew through the reserve. A falling branch snapped a power line nearby. The lights in the center flickered, then went out. Beeping machines surged. Emergency power kicked in. A loud pop echoed through the building. Luna jolted on the table, groaning in pain and confusion. Blaze stood in an instant, his ears flat, body arched, tail twitching. He let out a deep, unnatural growl, one that sent a chill down everyone's spine. "Don't enter yet," Jason said, hand raised. The staff paused, watching as Blaze began pacing in wide, tense circles around Luna's bed. His breathing was fast. His claws scraped the floor. He glanced at the staff, then back at Luna. He wasn't aggressive. He was terrified. Jason stepped in slowly, whispering, "It's okay, Blaze. We're still here." Then Luna made a soft, breathy sound, not a growl, but a tiny mew. And everything stopped. Blaze froze mid-step. He turned toward her. She blinked. He slowly stepped forward and rested beside her again, body trembling, but quiet. Jason exhaled. He didn't panic because of the storm, he said softly. He panicked because he thought we were losing her. When things calmed, the team adjusted Blaze's space. They placed food closer. They dimmed the lights. They kept the room quiet. But even then, Blaze ate only a few bites, drank just enough water, then curled again at Luna's side. He was giving her everything. Even himself. By the 4th day, Luna could finally lift her head without wincing. Her wounds were healing, slowly, but surely. The bruises around her ribs had faded from black to purple. Her breath was steady. She had begun to eat small portions of rabbit meat and drink water from a shallow dish. Each time she stirred, Blaze was there, watching her, supporting her with his silent presence. But Blaze himself was wearing down. He still refused to leave the room. Even with the door wide open and a shaded outdoor enclosure just a few steps away, Blaze stayed. He had not run, hunted, or stretched his legs in days. His shoulders drooped slightly. His gait, once powerful and smooth, was now slow, uneven. "He's burning through everything he has," Dr. Miriam Chase said during the morning meeting. "He's living off pure devotion, but his body won't last forever." "Can we separate them?" Leah asked. "Just gently encourage him outside." Jason shook his head. "He'll think we're taking her away. After what he's done for her, we owe him more than that." The staff was torn. Luna needed rest and quiet, but Blaze needed space, food, and movement. They were wild animals, after all, not pets, not zoo exhibits. But every effort to intervene, to coax Blaze away even for a moment, met with resistance. "He's not aggressive," Miriam noted. "He's afraid. He doesn't want her to vanish again." By the 6th day, Luna stood on her own. It wasn't graceful. Her legs wobbled and her muscles trembled, but she walked 3 steps and laid down again in the straw. Blaze lifted his head from his paws and let out a soft, raspy chirp, a sound not often heard from bobcats. And then, for the first time since the attack, she answered. A slow blink. A weak chuff. That night, the staff made a decision. Luna was strong enough to be moved to the rewilding enclosure, a secluded, protected section of forest inside the reserve. There, she could continue healing without human interference and start reconnecting with the instincts she'd need to survive. But Blaze couldn't go with her. At least, not yet. "We need to see if she can function without him," Miriam said. "She won't always have him. She needs to be her own creature again." The next morning, just before sunrise, Jason and 2 other rangers entered the room. Blaze was curled beside Luna, half asleep, tail flicking gently. Jason knelt down and spoke softly. "Just a short trip, buddy. She's ready." The team approached Luna with the stretcher. Blaze stood instantly, ears alert. But when Luna made no protest, when she calmly allowed herself to be lifted, he didn't interfere. He followed them, staying close, watching. Outside, the fog was thick. Pine trees loomed like giants in the mist. The rewilding enclosure sat at the edge of the reserve, several acres of protected land, surrounded by low fencing and motion-triggered cameras. It was meant to be a transition, not a prison. They laid Luna gently beneath a thick cedar tree and stepped back. Blaze hovered nearby. And then, the gate closed. Not permanently. Just for observation. But to Blaze, it was a wall between him and the only thing that mattered. He paced beside it, letting out low, aching grunts. He tried to press his body against the chain link, hoping to smell her through the mesh. Luna, still tired, curled in the leaves. She didn't call out. She simply closed her eyes. "He doesn't understand this is temporary," Leah whispered. "He thinks she's gone again." They gave it 2 days. Blaze remained beside the gate, eating very little, sleeping less. His coat had begun to dull, his tail twitching more from stress than alertness. But by the 2nd night, the staff noticed something unusual. He wasn't at the gate anymore. At first, panic surged. Had he escaped? Wandered off? Gotten sick? But the cameras caught him instead deep in the nearby woods, sitting by a boulder, staring at the trees. He had moved away. Not far, but away. Miriam smiled as she watched the footage. "He's letting her go," she said softly. At least for now. That evening, Luna walked on her own to a sun-warmed patch of grass and lay down under the open sky. She didn't cry for Blaze. She didn't stumble. She didn't search the fence line. "She's ready," Jason said. They opened the gate. No cages. No trucks. Just the forest. At first, Luna didn't move. She stared into the trees, sniffed the breeze, and blinked against the sunlight. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. One paw. Then another. And then she was gone, just like she came, into the wild. Jason watched the last flick of her tail vanish into the undergrowth. He glanced down the trail but saw no sign of Blaze. "He'll find her," he whispered. "If she wants to be found." 2 weeks passed. Luna's tracking collar sent signals daily. She was alive. Moving. Feeding. No longer near the enclosure but deeper in the northern section of the forest near Blackrock Basin. That meant she was hunting. Healing. Thriving. But Blaze hadn't been seen. His collar had gone silent for several days. Cameras hadn't picked up his image since he disappeared into the trees. The team feared the worst: dehydration, infection, stress-related illness. Then one morning, just after dawn, a motion sensor at the Ridge Trail lookout triggered. A camera snapped an image. It showed 2 bobcats. One, slender and confident, standing near a stream. The other, broader and slightly limping, keeping watch a few paces behind. Miriam smiled as she stared at the blurry photo. "They're back together." Jason stepped beside her and nodded. "But it's different now." "What do you mean?" Leah asked. "Look at the distance," he replied. "He's not beside her anymore. He's behind her. Like he knows she can lead now." Autumn crept into Sierra Wild Reserve with quiet footsteps, golden leaves drifting from the trees, cool wind slipping through branches, and the distant calls of migrating birds echoing through the valley. Weeks had passed since Luna and Blaze were spotted together on the Ridge Trail. Rangers monitoring the area confirmed sightings. The pair were alive, active, and thriving, though always from a distance. They rarely approached trails, never lingered near humans. They were wild again. But even the wild holds danger. Poaching had long been a shadow in the region. Though traps had been banned, old snare lines still dotted forgotten parts of the forest, rusted metal wires set decades ago, nearly invisible until it was too late. One cold morning, a ranger found one of those traps. Bloodied. Fresh. Nearby, they recovered a shredded GPS collar, and panic swept through the staff at Silver Creek Wildlife Center. "Is it Luna or Blaze?" Jason asked, heart pounding. The tracking signal for Luna's collar pinged faintly, far from the snare location. "She's moving," Leah said. "But, in circles." That wasn't a good sign. Jason geared up and hiked toward the signal, cutting through thick brush until he reached a steep ridge. There, near the edge of a shallow ravine, he found Luna. She wasn't hurt. But she was frantic. She paced along the tree line, yowling low, her tail lashing, her ears pinned back. Jason crouched low, following her gaze toward the bottom of the ravine. That's when he heard it. A soft, strained groan. Jason pushed through brambles and dropped into the gully, and froze. There, barely breathing, was Blaze. A rusted metal snare had looped around his front leg, cutting into muscle, skin, and bone. Blood soaked the leaves beneath him. His eyes were half open, watching Jason with a mixture of pain and calm recognition. He remembered him. Luna remained at the top of the ridge, growling softly, not descending, but not leaving either. Jason raised his radio. I found him. It's Blaze. He's badly injured. Requesting immediate evac and field surgery setup. And hurry. The rescue was quiet. No shouting. No panic. Just soft words and determined hands. Blaze didn't resist the stretcher. He didn't growl. He didn't flinch when they cleaned the wound or lifted him into the truck. He only closed his eyes when Jason whispered, "We've got you, buddy. Hang on." Luna followed the truck all the way to the forest edge, just like Blaze had once followed her. And then she vanished into the trees. Trusting them. Again. Back at the center, Dr. Miriam Chase worked for hours. The snare had done real damage. Tendons were torn. Muscle shredded. Blaze would likely walk with a limp forever. But he survived the surgery. And when he woke, he didn't panic. He blinked slowly. Looked around. And lay still. The next morning, Luna arrived. Not physically. But she appeared at the fence of the center's outdoor enclosure, waiting silently. When Blaze was wheeled out for fresh air, he spotted her instantly. He lifted his head, painfully, slowly, and let out a hoarse chirp. Luna didn't approach. She just sat, and waited. Each day, Blaze got stronger. At first, he couldn't stand. Then, he took a few shaky steps. His front paw dragged slightly, but he kept trying. Luna remained at the fence line every morning, calling softly when he stumbled. Her presence gave him strength. "She's why he's healing," Miriam said. "She's his reason." After 3 weeks, Blaze could walk again. Slowly. Unevenly. But he walked. And so, one last time, the team opened the gate. Not just to the enclosure, but to the forest. To freedom. To home. Luna stepped forward first. She turned, waited. Blaze hesitated, then followed. They didn't run. They walked, side by side, into the trees. A month later, a hiker spotted them near Crystal Lake. Luna was lounging in a sun-drenched clearing. Blaze stood a short distance away, watching the trees. He was still scarred. Still limping. But his eyes were bright. Still guarding. Still loving. From the beginning, their bond had defied logic. They weren't pack animals. They weren't raised in the same litter. They had no language or human way of expressing affection. And yet, they chose each other. Again and again. Through blood, through pain, through silence. Real love doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it protects. Sometimes it limps beside you and never lets you fall behind. And sometimes, just sometimes, it shows up in the wild, wearing spots and scars, disappearing into the forest without ever needing to say a word.